Hey, DeMeco Ryans spoke to the media today. I have only seen bits and pieces of this so far, so I'll be watching it with many of you for the first time. Let's get it started.
Go ahead, you got the first one.
And just to set the table, he's talking to Brandon Scott there. Brandon Scott is one of my favorite people in the world. His wife passed away from cancer a week or two ago. So this is the first time he's been back at work. And DeMeco gave him the first question.
Well, I guess we can start off with Kenny Green. Obviously, Nick talked about it earlier. How do you feel about you guys where you guys are with the offensive line? It looks not quite the way it did when you guys came in.
Right, it's definitely changed up front with our offensive line, and we're making all the necessary adjustments and additions that we need to do to put out the best O-line that we can. Feel like we still have a really good group up front that have to come together. We have new pieces up front. We have to come together very quickly, all right, to get ready to go play versus Baltimore. But feel good about the additions that we've added to our team. Guys who have experience, guys who played before, and guys who can step in and get the job done.
As far as that goes, yeah, they've got to simply add more interior offensive line. But by the time you watch this, they may have already. But Kenyon Green, who I'm guessing DeMeco will address a little bit more about this, seems like he had more than perhaps just his litany of physical issues, including his current shoulder problem, but 5-6 injuries over the past 18 months. And a couple times DeMeco has alluded to perhaps something either in his personal life or what have you.
What went into the decisions to you guys cut a couple of players that played a lot for you, specifically Desmond King? What went into some decisions to cut guys like?
And I've enhanced the audio somewhat as much as I could while eliminating some of the white noise. It's you guys know how these press conferences are. Brandon Scott asked about, I think, cutting guys who have quite a bit of experience like Des King, and I don't know if he mentioned Christian Kirksey, but you get the gist.
Desmond King, Christian Kirksey.
It's always tough when you have to make those decisions on veteran players who have played a lot of football. And it's also just as we look at it and make those decisions, we just look at those decisions as what's the best for our team for where we are right now, right? Not looking so much of what happened in the past. And those, Kirko and Dez are two really good players, leaders. Kirko, a really great leader, great man. And it's hard, right? It's hard to let those guys go. But at the same time, we feel like that's the best move for our team and wish those guys well. There's never any doors closed, right? You never know what can happen in the league as far as transactions and guys coming back, but we wish those guys well.
And Des King thanked the Texans on social media. Thank the city of Houston. I don't know if you thank the Texans specifically. I think Christian Kirksey, we could see the writing on the wall. They signed a bunch of veteran free agents in the offseason. They draft Henry To'oTo'o. They still had Christian Harris at linebacker. Denzel Perryman has looked ridiculously fast and athletic. And Corey Littleton was another guy that was going to compete amongst Christian Kirksey and Denzel Perryman, as well as Henry To'oTo'o, just to bring more athleticism to the table. And I think Christian Kirksey is a little bit of a throwback linebacker. He's a physical, bigger guy, not necessarily all that great in coverage. They want to modernize this defense and have guys that can do more of both.
You mentioned that it was a matter of when, not if, with Kenyon in May. I thought this might be a possibility. Could you kind of
Brooks Cabina referenced how Nick Caserio this morning said that it was a question of when, not if, this happened for with Kenyon Green getting cut.
talk about what that process was like over the summer, managing through that and preparing for the possibility that you would have to find more options?
Right, Kenyon did a really good job of just rehabbing. He had with his knee, trying to work it back, his shoulder. He had things going on, and I think it's really the credit goes to Kenyon because he put the work in his offseason to be available for a training camp. He went out every day and gave it his all every day at training camp and pushed through a lot of things. So, as I said earlier, really proud of Kenyon and the things that he fought through and do through a difficult training camp for him, physically having a lot going on and to go through a hard training camp. So, credit to him, a young player, he'll bounce back. Just hoping for Kenyon to take care of himself, get himself ready to go for next year.
And I think I've hemmed and hawed a little bit when talking about Kenyon Green. I think there's a lot you just simply can't tell because he's had so many injuries. I do think that when he was healthy or when it wasn't bothering as much last year, he did have some instances, the Chicago game, for instance, where he showed an ability to be brutally physical. And he's just a guy who's athletic enough for the NFL, but not athletic enough that he can get by without also being brutally physical. So he's got to get his body right if he's going to make it. And I'm not going to say I'm optimistic about it. I just think he does definitely have more than from what we've seen of him. And it might just be a matter of, look, he was injured when he got drafted. And when you're constantly fighting to get onto the field and to get that playing time and to prove yourself while you're injured, that whole anatomical chain gets screwed up and guys get banged up and bruised. They stay injured. And I'm also going to give him a pass on, sometimes not looking the most like he's got the physique of an NFL offensive lineman. It's really hard to do those things, to train the way you need to train, to have that body type and maintain your weight if you're not healthy. So this will be a big offseason for him, obviously. His offseason starts now.
Fielding the best five on the offensive line. What was the thought process with Michael Dieter and his release from the team? Where you see that position going?
What was your thought process with Michael Dieter, the cut that left the Texans with basically three viable interior offensive linemen plus Josh Jones right this moment, and Titus Howard?
Right now with
Titus Howard is an option.
with our team.
Real quick, Titus Howard, remember, balked at playing guard, but I don't know how much of that was mostly just because guards don't get paid as much as tackles. He's got paid like a tackle now. So, hey, team effort here once you're healthy. But then I don't know if they got enough guys to play tackle. Oh, no, I did it to you. I did it to everybody again. I abandoned all of you by.
Where you see that position going?
There we go.
Right now with our team, there are a lot of positions, a lot of things are still moving. Our team isn't just set just yet. Right? We won't have our team set until next week. So as you guys will see over the next few days, weekend, there will be a lot of moving pieces that continue to happen with our team. So.
Coach, on those same lines.
So there you go.
How do you, as a head coach, go about continuing just to be there for him on the human element of things? Because as a human
I don't know.
man, second year, of course, it's not nothing that he could compare to.
For my position as a head coach with all of our guys, it's first and foremost is caring about the individual, man. Everyone talks about, everybody can turn on the game and highlight a particular play, or this guy doing well on a play or not so well. That's what everyone sees, right? And that's the spotlight that we're in. Being in the NFL, I understand that. All of our players and coaches understand the spotlight that we're under, but I'd never lose sight of the men that I'm dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And we all have, as you all as well, we all have personal issues that are going on. We all have life that hits us all, right? And how can you handle that? And these players are resilient because they have to deal with the scrutiny that comes from the job that they have to do, but also they have life as well. They have families that they're trying to provide for. So it's tough on players, and a lot of times that doesn't, right, it gets highlighted at this point in time of the year because it's but these guys are men, they have families, and they are humans all year, right, who are going through things, not just when it's difficult, but all year they're dealing with things, and it just proves the resiliency of all the NFL players.
As far as DeMeco talking there, I think, look, I don't know, for whatever reason, it sounds different coming from DeMeco than it does when it was coming from, you know why? Because he was asked a question about that specifically, about kind of the emotional side of it for players, which is a thing. It's just that whenever you try to describe it, like immediately your mind goes to like, okay, like military folk and things like that, people that get moved around a lot on a very limited paycheck. That's a much different level of stress. It was Scherzer's wife, who kind of sanctimoniously said, hey, everybody, let's remember, this is hard for the millionaires and their wives when they get traded. Like, there's a way to handle it, and DeMeco did better.
You guys get ready for the season that's about to start. Obviously, season's going to be the starter. You guys are investing a lot in the offensive line. So how vital would that unit be to see this transition from college to the NFL?
The offensive line is important, right? No matter who's playing at quarterback. We have CJ, a young quarterback. If whichever quarterback lines up back there, you want to make sure he has a great protection up front. So that will always be of high priority to me amongst the offensive line and the defensive line, because I feel like that's how you win games. It starts up front, and that would never change. Right? Try to go out with the subpar O-line or subpar D-line, you're going to be in for a long day. So it'll always start there for me.
What sort of challenges does it present to the offensive line? You mentioned the additions, but these guys haven't played with each other. You only have a handful of practices before game one. What kind of unique challenge does that present to the offensive line?
When it comes to the offensive line and guys haven't played, it's at the end of the day, everybody has to do their job. Guys are dialed in with meeting time, preparation. All guys have to do is just do their job and do it as well as they can do it, and that's all we can ask for. And over time, right, they'll continue to gel together and come together as one. But all we need guys to do is go out and be a professional and do what they need to do to get their job done.
Coach,
Yeah, I think the big question is week one, if you're going to have whomever's playing left guard and he's a new addition, if you're going to have whoever's playing center, if because Scruggs is injured, might not play, who he's going to be. That's not much time with zero action to get like a rookie like Broker or somebody together, and that's nerve-wracking against a team like Baltimore, which tends to take a little bit of pride in their defense.
Is there anything else that you all are looking for as far as waiver wire and things like that is concerned at any position group?
I think he said, are you looking for anything specifically with some of the potential guys that you might be adding?
When it comes to the team and as we build the team, we'll always look to add right to our roster. We want to add as much depth as possible, right? When you can have the opportunity to add quality players anywhere at any position on our team, that's what we'll do. We're always looking to upgrade, always want to have the best team possible every time we line up. So again, we're always, searching that waiver wire, whatever, any way we can add or make a transaction to add to our team for guys that are going to help us and make our team better, then we're open to doing that.
Yeah, and I hate to hit this again, but because I said this 2 years ago and then last year, the first days of the Seattle Seahawks when Pete Carroll and the GM, who I'm blanking on right now, Schneider, when there was a lot of churn. There's a lot of churn on the roster. And I said that when Caserio first got here. Now I'm going to say it again, but I think it's going to be a different level of churn. I think there's more young talent right now that they feel good about, but there's going to be churn. And I'd actually like, in some respects, the fact that Caserio is now having to cut guys that he drafted last year, Thomas Booker, Garrett Wallow from 2 years ago. Those two guys, yes, they were mid-round picks, but Caserio traded up for those guys. So it's time to just be kind of cutthroat about things and not keep guys here on scholarship just because you drafted them.
Coach, what was your reflective moment before you started delivering the news to some of the guys that didn't make the team? What did your reflective moment before you?
I think he asked about reflecting on the moment when he had to break the news to some of these guys.
Start giving that news to those guys.
And before having to give the bad news to guys, I went back to, being a young player and understanding, right, you've battled with all these guys in training camp through preseason games, and now you come in one day and the locker room is different. It's a little quieter in the locker room. Some guys are missing. And I remember the shock that it gave me as a young player. And because everywhere you've played, from high school all college, like no one ever tells you, no, you can't be on a team. So it's hard to deliver that news and say, no, not at this time. So I reflect back to me being in that position as a young player, how it affected me. So when I talked to our team, I just made sure that the guys who are on our team, and they realized that still we need you to reach out, right, to our other brothers, right, make sure we're connecting, make sure you're checking on the guys, making sure they're okay. We'll have some guys come back eventually for practice squad, but make sure those guys feel that you care about them, right, because of the special bond you guys have built throughout OTAs and training camp.
Holy crap. Okay, I just had a flashback to when I got cut by the Texans. And that was the first time I'd been cut by a team. When I came over in the expansion draft, that was a situation in Jacksonville where they were bloated way over the cap, and everybody knew that it wasn't going to be like a normal expansion draft thing. It was almost going to be like getting traded. So it wasn't like a blow to the ego when that happened, because the Jaguars had to cut guys like Keenan McCardle and then put us in the expansion draft, or I think Keenan may have gotten traded, whatever it was. So the first time I got cut was in my 10th year in the NFL. And when I went back to clean out my locker, like 6 weeks later, I had been out of town and I wasn't really in a hurry. DeMeco was walking out of the facility. It was in the south end zone there because the rodeo was going on. So it must have been, February, whenever. And like DeMeco, he's just so freakishly mature. Like, he approached me and like had that empathetic look in his eyes and wanted to ask about how everything's going. What do I do from there? Have I heard from other teams and everything? So that's really cool to hear. I don't recall hearing that speech that he just gave about telling guys to reach out to people and everything. I don't recall hearing that from any other coach in the NFL. That's pretty cool. That's pretty special. That's really cool.
I know Titus is still returning. But he's played left guard before. Is that under consideration for him?
He asked about Titus returning and the fact that he has played left guard before.
For Titus right now, the only thing is for Titus just to get healthy and be back and ready to go.
DeMeco, when you look at the position groups, how do you feel about the nickel position? Do you feel like with Tavier, with Grayland having some versatility, do you feel like those guys can fill that spot for you?
Yeah, with our defense, with our defensive backs, linebackers, I feel like we have a very versatile back seven group, and that's how I look at it. Whoever those seven will be, we'll make it work. We have a lot of guys who can do multiple things, who played a lot of good football, and we'll see how it turns out.
Coach, what do you like about Josh Jones and Kendrick Green?
What do you like about Josh Jones, the offensive lineman, and Kendrick Green's Kendrick Green, second Ken Green now on the roster between Kenyon Green and Kendrick Green, who they picked up from Pittsburgh.
With Jones, added him, seen Jones, played against him, being with the Niners. Saw Jones there. We played him in Mexico City. He did a really good job of holding his own, right? Did a really good job at tackle, had a lot of great reps against us, and he's had a lot of snaps in his league, a lot of experience, so the game isn't too big for Josh to step right in and be ready to roll.
Josh Jones, I've watched minimal amount of him, not as much as I should have. I apologize, but I am intrigued by both the work I saw of him at guard and tackle. I think he is what you would expect of a guy that was available. He's not a finished product, despite having been in the league a couple years, but he's either got long arms or he plays in such a way that his arms look long. And I think there's something there, and maybe it's just a matter of finding the right scheme, finding the right coach, the right matchup. There's something there, just a little bit more polished and refined than what Kenyon Green is for sure. And then Kendrick Green, not hearing a lot of awesome stuff about him other just than the athleticism.
The defensive ends that you kept aside from obviously Will Anderson and Jonathan Bernard, but the depth at the defensive end position, obviously I think
He has basically what's going on with the defensive end position.
Martin, y'all kept Eric Rose. What about the depth of defensive end? What did you like about the guys outside of obviously?
What do you like about the depth of defensive end, or the guys behind the starters, or the name guys?
Yeah, really like what Jerry brings. Jerry's been rushing the passer for a long time, right? Around the quarterback a lot in this league. So like what Jerry brings to our group, Dylan is a young end who is on the rise. He's continuing to grow, continuing to get better on what we're asking him to do. And Rivers has done a really good job throughout the preseason of being consistent and like where he's headed as well. So I like the depth of our group. I like our interior group as well. And the opportunities that we have to, rush the passer and mix and match guys along our defensive line, I feel good about it.
As far as the defensive line and the depth, for one, shout out to Kurt Heinisch, who I think, honestly, I wonder if when DeMeco started breaking down film, if he looked at Kurt Heinisch and thought, not quite what I'm looking for, not my kind of guy, because he's not blazingly impressively athletic. That's why he was a college free agent, even though he went to a big-time school like Notre Dame. But, man, in training camp, practice, games, he just showed up. Just he's a brawler. Like he's an old school bar fighting type of dude in on the football field, and I like him. I'm impressed that he made the team. Hassan Ridgeway, same thing. Didn't do amazing things at San Francisco. He was available, for a very reasonable price, but he showed up in the games too. Dylan Horton, I like his upside a lot. I think he probably flashed more in practice than he did in the games, but you would see times where, man, there's a guy who gained 65 pounds from his freshman year into college. Not like Lattimore from the program or anything. He just got bigger. He was a safety in high school, and now he's transitioned into a defensive end who, kind of like Charles Omenihu, is big enough to go down and play inside, and maybe not just on passing downs. I think he could potentially be pretty versatile. And Derek Rivers, I think some of it was just a matter of staying healthy for once.
Take a couple more.
You notice how that separated him from the other cornerbacks.
Kadar consistently got better each and every day. From where he started to where he finished training camp, he consistently got better. He competed every day, played hard.
Kadar Holman.
Right, he was available every day, and Kadar has done a really good job.
All good? Oh, sorry, you want to watch? Yeah.
So Kadar Holman. Oh boy, sorry about that. If that goes in your guys' headphones. Kadar Holman, I thought in that last game especially flashed a couple times on some breakups. I can't remember who I thought he was at first, and because I had to go back and revise my opinion on who had made the play.
Coach, at the NFL Combine, you talked about how you root for those guys who are, who didn't come in heralded as superstars and things like that.
At the NFL Combine, DeMeco had talked about how he roots for guys who didn't come in as stars.
But the ones that are grinding. When you look back at your roster, did you see those type of guys? And when you look at a player like Khalil Davis, where he came from, even though he didn't make this team, did he just embody the spirit that you're looking for?
For sure.
So he asked about Khalil Davis, who a lot of us had taken a liking to and thought, man, he might really have a shot at it. I haven't kept up on any rumors about prospective practice squad guys or anything after waivers clears, but I would not be surprised at all if he's one of the guys that shows up on waivers, that shows up on the practice squad.
A lot of guys, right? Khalil Davis is one guy who came in late in training camp, and he showed up every day. He was in the backfield making plays, and the guys bounced around a lot, and those are the guys I root for, right? If we can help them to find a home and stick, right, and make their career in the NFL, those are guys I root for, guys who just love the grind, and that's what I like about it. Because NFL, as I talked about earlier, is a tough business. It's tough on these players, and they have a lot to deal with. So I appreciate the grind, and I try to make sure we got guys who are going to grind through the difficult times. Because when we go through the season, there'll be ups and downs, but who can stick with it, right? Who has that grit about themselves to stick through tough times, and that's the guys I want to go to war with.
All right. You know what? Thank you, DeMeco. I was actually feeling like a little bit depressed today because there's something about Final Cuts on this team this year where you have your emotional favorites and the guys you're pulling for, but then you combine that with losing some of those guys. You combine the very unstable situation at the interior offensive line. Not to mention, Shaq Mason didn't have a brilliant performance in that last preseason game. CJ Stroud got to show off some of his post-Georgia game mobility in that preseason game, partly because Shaq was chasing after his guy and almost like cut blocking CJ Stroud himself. But DeMeco got me going again. I'm ready to go. As far as Des King goes, yes, very surprising, very curious. I can't help but think about the fact that, he was suspended for that game. Was it 1 year, 2 years ago? There had been issues in his previous stay that weren't like a huge deal or anything. I have a hard time thinking that was what the issue was. I think perhaps a blend of younger, more outright athletic guys flashing and wanting to go with youth might have been part of it. Perhaps combined somehow with maybe Des King not wanting to have to take on any kind of a lesser role. I have zero clue. I have zero inside information. We're very much in that honeymoon period where I'm going to say you know what? I trust that DeMeco knows what he's doing, and Des King, who gets picked up by a team that knows defense in the Pittsburgh Steelers, thinks something of Des King, but we're honeymooning it on out, right? It's like when your wife farts for the first time in front of you. You're like, that's cool. It happens. People fart out Des King every now and then. We're all done.